Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another session. I'm really excited because we've got Eric McDonald joining us today. And Eric is actually a business development manager at EcoOnline Global, and they're based in the United States. Now, for those of you who don't know, EcoOnline is a software company that's dedicated to making environmental health and safety management software. And they try to make their software as user-friendly and as cost-effective as possible and very efficient. So I'm glad to have you here, Eric, joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be here.
So we're just going to really be breaking it open and looking at environmental health and safety software. You're going to help us understand where do we need to get started. And so I thought the first question that I'd ask you to just kick this off is, really, why is it more valuable for a business to be using EHS software when a lot of us have been very comfortable, to be transparent with you, with using either Excel or our pen and paper? So maybe we could just start at the basics there, and you can help us understand the value of moving from Excel to a software.
Absolutely. So, I know over the last 20, 25 years, there has just been a lot of changes just in terms of the digitization, really, and kind of the flexible tools that we have at our fingertips today. And so Excel was probably great maybe in the 1990s, but today we need a lot more metrics. We need the ability to pull out key performance indicators. And ultimately, you really want a tool that can capture really everything that your organization is looking to capture and be able to tailor it to your needs. Now, Excel has been great in terms of a tool to be flexible enough to do that. But in terms of getting everyone online, using the same solution, and even really sharing that information internally can be an absolute nightmare. And then for those that really have to put together those corporate or quarterly reports, pulling all that data together is an absolute nightmare. So today, with all the software and technology capabilities and even the mobile capabilities, you really want a software tool that can really enable your employees and not disable them. So, yep.
So I get it from the executive side that need the reports and everything, right? But what is the value for those on the front line who are like, it's a lot easier sometimes to just hand somebody a piece of paper for an audit or whatever and say, hey, can you get this done? As opposed to trying to figure out how to set people up on their mobile. And what, like, I don't even know, like, can I have the deli manager or the bakery manager do an audit on, like, I like to split up my audits so that it's not just one person doing the whole thing. I found it more effective in the store if people had ownership for their own areas. Like, am I still able to do that?
Absolutely. And in fact, that a software tool really enables that. It allows you to bring people together, get them all on the same page, and then really not make it so complicated as well, because you can have how-tos included within those software modules, really, and even the ability to share things out from a group or a corporate-wide look to just a single user or just a single department. So you can really streamline your processes and really build out your action plans in a more concise and organized way with a software tool.
The other question I had for you about this was another thing, and I'm sure you've heard this before, is about doing training.
Yes.
Right. And so there's a lot of different kind of training modules. So how would that work? Like, where does the information go? Can I easily, like, I have a government official come in and wants to look at who I've trained. If I have them on site in binders, I can just open up the binder and show them who's been trained. But I'm not really getting how I would do that once I put it into mobile and it goes into a software. So how would that look?
Right. So just in how that would look, and sometimes it can be even a traditional learning management solution, or really just an audit management solution that you want them to go through training before they, either get their certifications or maybe even just required for the job. And in that case, you can really pull and track the user specific, what they've done, how they've done it, and even the gamification of like how they score, even with a software tool like that. So you can really understand and push out one, curriculums, but two, really how well they're doing, even from a department or even just an individual member wide look. So then you can really see and really tailor who needs more training, and who and why do they need the training as well when it's all in one place. And then how to really get it out. I mean, with the ability to kind of export and really pull out PDFs, it's a lot cleaner. You're able to email that, quickly copy that, and you're not still dealing with paper and pencil. You have multiple copies that you can send to many different areas, or pull for those government reports too, or yeah.
Okay, so this just came to my head, so I think I'll just throw it out there and ask you, is like in the store, like we have people who can be using a power jack or different pieces of equipment, but they do need health and safety training before they use that, like a baler, et cetera, because they're very dangerous pieces of equipment, right? And so now I'm kind of thinking in my head, sometimes we have to actually like set up another staff member to do the training with somebody. And I'm wondering, like, is there any way to be like, before somebody uses a baler, having them do the training and then submit that? Like, is that a thing?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of times you even see it from a permit to work standpoint. Some people will call it a module, or have a module like that you specifically need to either go through the training or have this permit to either perform the action or job. And so you'll see that a lot with like forklifts and things like that, but typically similar there. And I mean, with technology and some of the different information you can pull, you can even see, okay, does the user, have they done this training? Okay, then we can allow them access for these tools. And if someone uses the tools without having the training, you'll quickly know, and you'll quickly find out with that tool as well. So it's very, if anything, it's collaborative, but it's also little in the fact that you can really have that overview too, and sort of see, okay, where are the pains here and what are we missing really in that.
Okay, cool. And another thing that I was looking at, because I'm thinking about different features that would be really useful as a health and safety professional, because I've done the job, right?
Right.
And so another place that we were working with in my workplace anyway, is that we would have a joint health and safety committee,
Mhm.
right? And so that committee would also often want to submit ideas or report things up to management. And we have a committee meeting and we'd have to physically take the notes and then put them into an email, etc. How does software help those kind of work groups kind of do what they need to do?
Right. So, I mean, in a couple different ways. So it gives those work groups really the power, one, to build out either reports for those committees, or even dashboards for those committees too, that's pulling live information, and really giving you a full scope of work or what's going on within your organization or plant, or even with training, or audits. So it really helps from that perspective. But then it also can really help too, in just capturing that information. If you have a tool that can capture information from different sources, so not only just inputting it from the software solution or the online solution, but also maybe capturing from like SMS, or capturing video and pictures on site, or even capturing different voice memos, things like that too. And then having that in one place as well allows you all to kind of dig really into whatever you'd like, and really tailor that to what your needs are and what your processes are too.
I brought up a few ideas in my own head from my
Mhm.
own background as a health and safety professional about some things that I would think are important. Now, what features would you recommend people should initially focus on? Like some of the
Mm.
top features that an EHS professional or leader might find of value from your experiences.
Right. So I think it really starts with one, how is it administered, right? So everyone wants a software that's easy to administrate from or with either their IT team internally or their software partner. Typically, that'll help with user adoption, but really you want something that is easy to use, but easy to change and configure, really. Not necessarily customize, but configure. So in terms of just a quick example, typical changes to like changing label names or adding text fields or adding things to your audit profiles, or even maybe just what actions you're capturing and how those are being sourced or collected, those type of aspects, not necessarily going and changing a full module or creating a full module. I think that's very key. I mean, there's a number of organizations now that'll have really robust administration teams that will want you to, one, work with them to develop the tool, but then also keep going back to them to make any changes or updates, or even really make simple ads that you could even do yourself with some other tools. So I think that's very key. I also think too, just from in the world of reporting, and everyone wants kind of a clean, simple dashboard or calendar view. I think all three are very important. I think from a reporting capability, you want to be able to capture different elements. So in terms of maybe it's location, so being able to capture that location where an incident happened, or even maybe voice or mobile, being able to quickly send a text to either your solution, really, and be able to capture an incident that way too. There's a lot of great tools out there now to do that. And then from a dashboard and reporting capability too, being able to build those dashboards, configure those dashboards the way you like, but it's not taking a implementation consultant to do that. You're being able to do that at your fingertips. I think really you need a solution that's going to empower your organization and really give them the tools to manage it themselves. Now, some folks do not want that. Some IT teams really want that support, and that's okay too, but it just depends on how that really looks. Is it something that's going to cost you in the long run? Those are the big questions there too. And then lastly, I'd say integration. That's very key nowadays, being able to either integrate your HR software, either insurance provider information, insurance feeds, or even other existing solutions too that you may have internally. Being able to pull those feeds in and maybe even add those data elements into those incident management reports you're capturing, or even those dashboards, is powerful too. And nowadays it's needed, especially just for safety professionals and EHS across the board, really. So I would say those are some of the key factors today. And then ultimately something that's easy to adopt too. So if it's robust training, if they tell you up front, we put everyone through a key boot camp, and we get all the super users ready to go through, depends on how many weeks or how many sessions. Either they have a plan for it or they don't. They'll tell you from the start of the implementation what it will really take for you to be onboarded and training, and so that needs to be clear as well. And typically, you want a solution that's not going to put you through a 6-week or 6-month boot camp, really. So yeah, there's just a few of the things to take a look at, really, in terms of features, but then also services on the back end too.
So as a health and safety professional, at least in our retail grocery commercial setting, we had probably about 150 different safety modules. Right, for inside the store, because you're covering a whole variety of different areas. Some modules might be specific to the bakery, whereas others might be specific to a butchery, or up in front in the cashier, again, because they all have different working environments inside the commercial space, right? So one of the questions I wanted to dive in and ask you was, in grocery retail anyway, for us, we had about 150 different modules for just one store location, right? And that's because, like, in there we have a lot of different kind of working environments. You've got the butchery, you've got the bakery, you've got the cashiers up front, and every single area will have its own unique needs for programming. And then of course you've got some general stuff, right, that people might need to know throughout the store, because it's for compliancy, that everybody has a certain basic knowledge in certain areas. So one of the questions I have for you, because a lot of times we already have this all set up on our Excel sheets that we discussed in the earlier, right? At least for my generation, it was Excel. How do you then take this big elephant and start taking little bites to get it into the software? Because that can be very overwhelming.
Yes, certainly. And I've worked with a few companies that have done just that. And really it's working with your software provider and software vendors to really understand, okay, how can this tool, or how can a tool, one, mirror my processes, but isn't geared towards the old way of doing things, right? So being able to, and that's sort of where that configuration over customization comes back into play too, because if you can configure a solution to your processes and it works, then that's great. You don't necessarily want to change a solution to fit your needs, because then it might not necessarily, the process might not work in that case too. So if you catch what I'm saying there, really, it can be actually kind of a trouble point for some, because they think that each module that they've already had in the past will mirror in the new system, but really sometimes they can go and limit that and really just change it with either different site permissions, or really tailoring different workflows per different business unit, or even department, really, in your case. And so I think that really challenging your vendor to understand, okay, how can we work together for us to build a solution that will meet my needs? And sometimes the way that they go, the vendor, it could be the best practice. It could be maybe backed by safety professionals, and it's been tried and trusted too. And so they can work with you to really minimize how much you're working with. I mean, and I think back in the past, I think everyone said more modules, really kind of more data you're pulling in, but not necessarily now today, with more advanced architecture from a software side. Those data elements are easier to pull out and build on. So I don't actually think you need as many modules today. What you just need is the clear processes and clear objective, really, for those processes and how those can be accomplished too. So it is really working as a partnership with your software vendor there.
The other thing that came to mind, and maybe you can shed some light if this is possible or not, is I know for us in our industry, there were certain hot spots that were reoccurring in every store, right? And then maybe one store might find a solution, right? So for example, in our store, it was the commercial pizza oven, which a lot of people felt that because they can do an oven at home, a gas oven or a barbecue at home, what's the big deal of lighting a commercial oven, right? And it sounds very simple when you're talking about it until an incident happens. Right. And so that for me was one of the challenges I had in my store, until I brought in a professional gas person to talk to the team about the dangers of commercial gas. And then they bought into the whole, well, we better take ownership and accountability, and created their own training session for their department and their own processes and policies. Can I put that into the software? Like, can they be owning that?
Absolutely. In fact, there's a number of ways to do that with certain solutions, some that are just a simple learning management solution. You can create your curriculum, you can upload it, then add different users that will use either that equipment or the whole company, so they can go through a quick safety training on the oven. Or you can even add it to a documents module. And so every time you're going to use a different tool, or at your sites, you could really just have that there. So it's like, this needs to be taken into account before doing anything, and really have that as a checkbox there. So, and there's a couple ways to do that too.
And so Eric, can that then be like, we were one store out of 150 on Ontario. So if our one store created that and it was working, and the regional safety manager was like, hey, this store has really locked this down, can that then be easily spread out to the other 149?
Absolutely. In fact, that's kind of the beauty of a software solution. You can see what worked at one site, just one location, and then either replicate that to a larger scale, and really pull in the relative employees. And that's a great way to, one, either test a solution or test a process and see if it works, and then even build on it too with those accesses.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they're like, they have the mind frame that if nothing happens, that means we have a safe environment, which is far from the truth. That means you could have been very lucky.
Right.
Compared to, here is a group, they've had training about something that we know is a hot spot for incidents to occur. And so far, it's actually just been near misses. So that's like very lucky that something hasn't happened. So then what you're saying is that this could actually be used as a test case to see, like, we brought in a professional to train the staff. The staff's action towards that was to create their own training for their department. And then they use that. And then over a period of time, they haven't been even attempting to light the commercial oven. That's the indicator of a safe environment, is because they understand now the value of not taking the risk.
Right, exactly.
That would be my leading indicator, is that they understand the value of not taking that risk, and then they pass down that belief to new people who are coming on boarding, so that they sustain it, right? And then once that's proven, you could read that through the reports. Is that right?
Yep, absolutely. And then also too, I mean, then you're really getting into the conversation there, where software should aid into building your safety culture, really. And with those tools in place, you can really do that, and you can take ownership and give your employees ownership of it too, so that they do feel like they're a part of that.
Well, we are at the end of our time. It's been an amazing conversation. I think where we're getting into right now could lend itself to another discussion about like, how can people get the most out of their software? So I'd like to invite you back to maybe do a session on that if you're open to it.
Definitely. Would love to.
Thank you. Now, before we leave though, I did want to ask you, do you have any closing thoughts that you wanted to leave the audience with?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, just in terms of software today, there's actually a lot of great tools out there. And I mean, ultimately, it's going to be based on your objectives. I mean, certain tools will work for one industry sector than the other, or even certain companies in the same sector and not the other, because based off those objectives ultimately and some of their internal processes that have been there. Really, I think it's all about finding a great partner that'll go along with you on that journey to understand what those objectives are, and how those processes can align. And I've seen a lot of times where you have great conversations on both sides, actually, and it's sometimes just the idea or just the internal architecture of the organization doesn't necessarily align with the software vendor, and that's okay too. So it's really just finding that preferred vendor that's willing to go on that journey with you. It is typically a 3+ year journey, and that's what you really want. Is you want a software solution that you can implement and then continue to grow with too. And so it's understanding, do they have the values that for your organization to build that great safety culture, great safety organization, but then really lastly, do they have the long-term roadmap to continue to grow with you and to grow with your organization? So those are some key things just to always keep in mind too.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you, Eric, for taking your time today to share your knowledge with us. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to be on, and looking forward to our next conversation, Tamara.
Absolutely. And for everybody joining us, thank you for taking the time to listen to our discussion. It's been a great discussion. We hope that you've picked up some tidbits that you can use in your workplace. And I'd like to thank EcoOnline for their support in this discussion today. So EcoOnline is a software company. They are dedicated to making environmental, health, and safety management software. And they really try to make their software user-friendly and cost-efficient as possible. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Stay safe.